Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Niche Level. So in this video, we will see a lab demo on how do we migrate a VM from an on-prem data center environment into the AWS cloud. So this is basically a continuation of my part 1 video where I had discussed about the various cloud migration strategies, and I also given a preview of the steps that we need to do in order to migrate the VM from the on-prem to the cloud. So in this video, we are going to do that, and we will understand the steps that we need to follow to do that migration. So let's move ahead with the lab steps now. So as a first step, let me go ahead and launch an EC2 instance from which we can interact with the S3 service using the CLI commands. So I will log into my AWS console. So let me launch an instance. Okay, I'll switch the region to Reagan. Give it a name as EC2 demo. I will select the Linux to AMI. We'll go with the T2.micro. We go ahead and select a key pair. We'll allow the SSH access from my IP address. Let us go ahead and launch the instance. Okay, so while the instance is getting created, we will just do the second step also. So creating a S3 bucket with this particular name. The name can be anything. But let me go ahead and create a S3 bucket, and under that we need to create a folder called as VM-import. That would be our second step. Okay, let me search for S3. Okay, and I'll create a bucket. We'll give the name as n-backup- maybe today's date. Object ownership, I will select the ACLs enabled, and we can block the public access to this bucket. Let me go ahead and create the bucket. Okay, so let me change the bucket name and give the name as 14324. Okay, so the bucket has been created, and under that we need to create a folder with the name VM-import. This is a prerequisite where the folder name should be only VM-import. So here I will say create folder, and I will give it a name VM-import. Let me click create folder. So now let us go back to our EC2 instance, and we will configure the command line interface. Let me see if the instance is ready. Okay, this is my instance. I just launched. We terminate the other instances just to avoid confusion. Okay, I will log into this instance. Okay, we log in with the default username, ec2-user. I will switch to the root. Okay, so we'll have to configure the command line interface now with the command AWS configure. So before that, what I will do is, team, I will create a IAM user, at least which has the admin permissions. I will go into the IAM console. Okay, I'll go into the users here. So I have one user called demo user. What I will do is probably I will assign administrator permissions. Anyway, it is already there, right? There is a demo user with administrator access. So I'm going to use the credentials of this user for my AWS CLI, right? So I'm going to use the access keys and secret access keys for this user. I can see that already we have 2 access keys. So let us go ahead and deactivate one. Then I will delete as well. And I'll go ahead and create an access key. This is for the command line interface. I'll click this confirmation, click next for EC2 fraction with other services. Now we have our credentials ready. So we will use these credentials to configure our CLI. Okay, so I'll come back to my EC2 instance and I will say AWS configure. So it is asking for the access key ID. Let me copy it from here. My access key ID, and it is asking for the secret access keys. So in which region we are going to create this instance. Also, our S3 bucket is also in the Oregon region. So I'm going to mention US-West-2, and that's it. Our CLI is configured. So now if I go back to my instructions, we have launched an instances for executing CLI commands. And I also created a S3 bucket with the folder name VM import, right? And we also have configured the CLI in the EC2. Now, what is our next step? We need to upload the VM image to a S3 bucket. So basically, team, I have a OVA file which is the image for a Ubuntu web server. So I'm going to directly upload that OVA file onto our S3 bucket, right? So let's say this is our scenario where I have an Ubuntu server in the on-prem. This is my on-prem DC where I have a Ubuntu server. So this is a Ubuntu VM, and for this VM, I already have a OVA file, right? So the OVA file, what I have is this one. Okay, so this is my OVA file, my demo.ova, and this is typically the Ubuntu VM, which is a Apache web server. So what I'm going to do, I have converted this VM into a .ova file. OVA is a common standard for the virtualization environment. Okay, open virtualization appliance. OVA is the open virtualization appliance. So if at all you are converting the VM into a disk file, which has to be exported to the other environments. Basically, it gets converted into .ova. And there are other formats also like .vmdk, etc. So if the environment is a VMware vCenter, once you export your VM appliance, it gets stored as a .vmdk file, right? So in our case, we have an image with a .ova. And what I'm going to do is this image, I'm going to upload onto the S3 bucket. So this is the S3 bucket. So I'm going to upload this onto the S3 bucket. And the EC2 instance, whatever we have created, it is going to interact with S3 bucket, and it is going to create a AMI for this particular OVA file. Okay. So first we are going to upload this OVA file to the S3 bucket. So this is our image coming from the on-prem data center, right? So that is what we need to assume here. Okay. So now I have this OVA file. So let me go ahead and upload this in our S3 bucket. I'll go to my S3 bucket here, and I will go inside this folder, VM import, and I will click upload. So let me click add files, and I'm going to select this option here. And with respect to the permissions, probably I can just give it a grant public read access for the time being, and let us go ahead and click upload. It is giving an error, access denied. Okay, maybe I will enable public access to the S3 bucket for now. Back to my bucket. I click this bucket name, and I go into the properties. I'll go into the permissions here and remove the block public access. Click save changes. Okay, now we'll go ahead and upload the object. Okay, so now that OVA file is in the process of getting uploaded. So team, if at all you want to get more information about this OVA format, .vmdk, etc. So let me put in a link in the description of this video. You can actually go through that. So this is the link. You have the details on this link. What is this OVA format? That is the Open Virtualization Appliance. This is OVF. OVF is an open standard for packaging and publishing, distributing the virtual machines and the associated metadata, right? And in our case, we had the OVA, which is the Open Virtual Appliance, right? So Open Virtual Appliance is a file format that packages and distributes the virtual machines on virtual appliances in a compressed single file archive. So it is based on the OVF format, standard, and as a convenient way to distribute and deploy the virtual machines across different virtualization platforms, right? So in our case, we have used the OVA format, but if at all the virtual machine is coming from a VMware vCenter environment, ideally it will be stored as a .vmdk, which you can see here, right? So VMDK is a file format used by the VMware virtualization software. Okay, so there are various formats that is available based on the virtualization platform. Let me see how much our file got uploaded. Okay, so it is still uploading team. It will take maybe another 2 or 3 minutes. So I'll just pause the video and I'll come back quickly. Okay, so I can see that the OVF file has been uploaded onto the S3 bucket. So let us just move ahead with the next steps. So we have done with this step, upload the VM image to the S3 bucket, which is the image of our Ubuntu web server, Apache web server. Now we'll have to define the global customization variables. So first is we need to define a variable called bucket name, and we have to map that actual bucket name to that. So what is our bucket name? So it is n-backup-14324. So let me just add this in the EC2 instance. I'll just change it as 14324. This is just like an environment variable, right? So if at all you want to have this, as a permanent setting, then you can even put it in the .bash profile file also. So I will just say echo $bucket_name. You can see that it is actually echoing our bucket name. So that is the first customization variable that we need to set. And secondly, we need to set a variable called VM_image_name and map our image name to that. So what is our image name? Let me copy the file name here. Okay, mydemo.ova. Fine. So this is our image name. Enter. Now let me try to echo $VM_image_name. Okay. So these are the two global customization variables that we need to set. Now we need to create a file called as a trust policy.json in our EC2 instance. Okay. So let me go ahead and create this file. In this file, basically we are having the EC2 instance to assume the service role, which is VM import export.amazon.aws.com. So this role is a prerequisite for the EC2 instance where we are going to execute the VM import command. So we have to create this trust policy.json for the EC2 instance to assume this particular role, right? So let me copy this content and I will create this file. Okay, so our trust policy.json file is created. Right, now let us go ahead and create the IAM role for the VM import. Okay, so we have to create a role with the name VM import, and that role should assume the policy what we have defined in this trust-policy.json. So let me go ahead and create a role. I'll copy this command. So AWS IAM create role name is VM import, and assume the role policy document, which is coming from the trust-policy.json. So it is saying the role with the VM import is already existing. So what we can do, probably I will create a role name as VM import 1. Or we can even delete the existing role. So I'll go back to my IAM dashboard. Let's try to create it afresh. I go into the role. I will select this VM import. I will just say delete. And then we will create this role afresh. Okay, now the role has been deleted. I will re-execute that command. Okay, so now this VM import role has been created. And this is the ARN for the role. Fine, so that step has been completed. Now what is our next step? We need to create another file called as role-policy.json. right? So in this role, we are giving the necessary permissions for the EC2 instance for the actions that it has to perform on the S3 bucket. So you can see here, we are giving the effect as allow. And what are all the permissions that we are giving for the EC2 instance? To get the bucket location, to get the objects from the bucket, to list the buckets, right? Because the VM has to interact with the object, whatever we have uploaded onto the S3 bucket. And apart from that, we are also giving some other permissions, modify snapshot attribute, to copy the snapshot, to register the images, etc. So this file will be very important to give the required permissions to the EC2 instance. Now let me go ahead and create this role-policy.json. Okay, so now this file has been created with all the required permissions. Now what is our next step? Now we need to attach the policy to the IAM role VM import, right? So whatever that role-policy.json file that we created, that has to be attached to the VM import role. So I'm going to use this command to attach that policy to the role. Okay, it's done. Now we need to create a file called as containers.json. That's our next step, right? So we have to create a file called as containers.json. And in that file, what exactly we are defining? The description is, this is a Ubuntu image. The format is a OVA format. And we are also defining the S3 bucket, the bucket name wherever image is available. That is the image of the instance, the image of the Ubuntu on-prem server. And as a S3 key, we are actually mapping the image name to that S3 key variable. So with this parameters, we have to create a containers.json file. So let me go ahead and create this file. Okay, so now this file has been created. Now it is time for us to start the import process, the VM import process. But before that, let us preview the files that we created. So we created 3 files, right? So first we created a trust-policy.json, where we had the EC2 instance, assume the VM export import role. Then we created a role-policy.json. Then we created the containers.json. These 3 files are the prerequisites before we start the VM import process. Now let me go ahead and begin the VM import. I'm just going to make a change here. This is a Ubuntu image, right? So I'll execute this command. AWS EC2 import image. The description is Ubuntu. And we are calling the containers.json here, which is containing the actual image name that is uploaded onto the S3 bucket, right? So let me execute this command. Okay, so you can see here, currently the status is pending, and it has also initiated a import task. Okay, so what this import task will do is, it is going to pick up the image, whatever is available on the S3 bucket, and it is going to convert that image into a AMI. It is going to create a machine image for that particular, OVA file. And once the AMI is done, we can launch an instance from that AMI in AWS, and we can you start using that. Okay. So now currently it is actually in the pending state. We can also check the status of this particular import task. So we have a command for that. So AWS EC2 describe import image tasks, the task IDs. So let us check the status. I will copy this task ID here. So you can see currently the status has changed to converting, right? Initially it was pending. Now it has changed to converting. Then after that, I think it will change to reboot, and finally it will be in the available status, right? So we'll have to just continue monitoring this import task ID status. So it will take another 2 or 3 minutes for the status to change. So now you can see that the status has changed to updating. So after the updating, the status will change to booting, and post that booting process, the AMI will be ready for us. Now you can see that the status message has changed from updating to booting. Okay, then after this it will be the completion status. So it will be converting, updating, booting, and completed status. These are the 4 status messages that we can see. So let us give it another couple of minutes before it completes. So now we are in the status of preparing the AMI, right? So basically now this import task is preparing an AMI from that Ubuntu image. Once the AMI is ready, we would be able to launch the instance from that AMI. Right? So let me go ahead and refresh my screen. We can check the AMI section here. So if I go into the images, so it is still in the process of creating the AMI, but probably it might take another few minutes. It is still preparing the AMI. Okay, great. So now I think the AMI has been created, and you can also see the status has completed here, right? This import task has been completed and it has already created the AMI. We can also see the AMI ID. This is the AMI corresponding to our image in the on-prem data center, right, for the Ubuntu server. So let me go back. We will refresh this AMI screen. Can you see here, team? This is the AMI that we could successfully create by importing the image. Okay, so now what I will do, let me go ahead and create a instance from this particular AMI. So this, so let me name it as Ubuntu web server, and let it be a t2.micro, and I will give the key pair. Probably I'll specify the key name and then SSH. Let me allow from my IP address, and this is a Ubuntu web server, right? The image from the on-prem is a web server. So I'm going to open the HTTP port 80 as well, and let us go ahead and launch the instance. Okay, so the instance has been launched. So shortly, once we access this instance IP address in the browser, we should be able to open the Apache web application. Okay, because in the on-prem setup, it was the same image that was hosting the Apache web application, which is the one we have migrated to the cloud now. So we should be able to see the Apache application once the instance is initialized and in the running state. Maybe let us give it a couple of minutes. Okay, so now the instance is in the running state. So let us try to hit this IP address in the browser, and we have already opened the port 80, right? The HTTP port 80. So let us see if you are able to get the default Apache web Ubuntu page, because that was the web server in the data center. So you can see here, team, it's the same page that I'm able to navigate now. So this confirms that we were able to successfully migrate our virtual machine from the on-prem environment into the cloud. Okay. So this is what we did. Basically, we created a S3 bucket, and whatever the image that we had for the Ubuntu VM in the on-prem data center, that was converted into the OVA format, and we uploaded that image into the S3 bucket. Then we actually created a EC2 instance. So EC2 instance was created in the AWS cloud. And using this EC2 instance, basically we gave all the required permissions to this instance in order to pull the image from the S3 bucket and convert that image into the AMI, right? So once the AMI is ready, we were able to launch the instance from that AMI. So these are all the sequence of steps that we need to do in order to convert an image from your on-prem data center and launch as an instance in the AWS. Okay. So this is actually our AWS infrastructure. Okay, I hope everyone is clear with the sequence of steps that we perform. Also, some useful links having additional information about this VM export import and what is the difference between the various virtualization image formats. I'll be putting the links in the description section, team. So if you like this content, you may share your feedback. You can subscribe to my channel and keep giving your continued support to my channel. Right. Also, I wanted to add that I'm also delivering trainings on AWS and DevOps. If anyone interested to take the trainings from me, you can send an email to the mentioned email ID and I'll be sharing the details about the courses I'm offering. So yeah, that's all I had for this video, team. I hope this content was helpful. So I will meet you all in my next video. Thank you all so much.